Hi everyone, today we're talking about is Peloton Stock A Buy. And Peloton Stock is a recent IPO and it IPO'd at $29 and recently now it's dropped down to $22. It's only been on the New York Stock Exchange for about a month, but I think quite a few people already know this company because of its TV adverts. It's done a really good marketing campaign prior to going on the stock market to get customers. And if you haven't seen it, this is what the marketing adverts look like.
Okay, Peloton, let's do this. Rachel in London, I see you. Let's see what you've got today. David in Edinburgh, that is 2.
Now, like I say, it was at $29 and it has dropped down a little bit to $22 now. It has pulled back a little bit. We're going to talk about what Peloton stock is, and then I'm going to talk about some positives and some negatives and what I'm going to do about this new IPO, as it's one that everyone's kind of been talking about over the last month, one of the more interesting IPOs that has happened. So if you don't really pick anything up from what has just happened from that marketing video, basically it's an at-home exercise bike that lets you pretty much do like gym classes while being at home on that bike, and you have a screen and you're able to watch or join in this gym class while being at home. Now it's worth saying that they have extended now to treadmills, and these treadmills are a little bit more than the exercise bikes. But the exercise bike, as far as I can tell, for the basic package, we're talking $2,245. Now, straight from that sort of price top, you know, when we're looking at this sort of price for a product, it's like, wow, this is quite an expensive product, and it's definitely going to be a very limited market, mainly because it's an exercise bike, and I think a lot of people don't just want to do cycling, and as well as that, I don't think like many people are interested in cycling. And just to top that off, that price is a pretty, like, you're going to have to be pretty wealthy to be like, I'm going to spend $245 on an exercise bike. You have to be earning some pretty serious cash to think that that's worth buying at that sort of price. Now, on top of that, you've actually got to pay a membership fee. So one thing I thought when I did look into this and I saw this straight away, I thought, yeah, it's a nice upfront cost, but at the end of the day, like, they're not going to have any revenue coming in afterwards. But actually to join the classes as well, you've actually got to pay a membership, and there's a cheaper option which is $20. There's also a little bit more an expensive option which is $40. So that's it's quite an expensive membership, really. Like, that's probably like a little bit more than your average gym, really. So as well as that, you've got a very limited market because it's cycling only, and as well as that, it's a very expensive price. But when I look at this price, I'm thinking, I would rather not work at home, and I'd rather go, you know, exercise at the gym, and not have this stored in my home, because as well it's going to take up some storage room as well in the house. So I wouldn't like it in the house either. So I thought that's two big major points that does slightly put me off, and I can't see it doing too well from that sort of product. But actually, when we started getting into the numbers aren't actually too bad, really. So some of the positives with the stock is that it actually has a 95 retention rate from people that are buying that membership program, and that is actually a really good rate of people still subscribing, still using the exercise bikes. That's nearly fantastic. I don't think you can get much better than that. I actually checked and saw that the actual normal rate for kind of anything exercise class related that stays at home is about 75%. So you can see they must be doing a good job, and people that are buying these products are still using them. Potentially you could argue that they're still using them because they kind of have the money to kind of go, you know what, I only use it once a month, but $20, $40 a month to me, I'm not fussed. Like, I'll easily play that, because they are going for, you know, slightly higher income houses. Maybe you could argue that case, but even so, 95% is a pretty good rate. Revenue, when we talk, you know, this is actually a growth company, is a company that started up. It's a market disruptor, and you know, I do like market disruptors, and it is doing 110% revenue last year, which is a great revenue rate. It is predicted to slow down a little bit, but even so, 110% revenue is a great thing. And as well, the gross margins are 43%, which is something that stood out to me. Now, I wouldn't say it's absolutely amazing. I'd be more impressed if the gross margins were towards the 50 to 60%. That would be more impressive, because we are talking a really expensive product here. So if we're talking that someone was going out and buying an exercise bike for like $2,000, and the gross margins were only 10%, I'd be like, whoa, what's going on here? But these kind of like the gross margins I really expected, but even so, it's a pretty decent margin overall. Now, there is some negatives with this stock. The negative with the stock is that the revenue is only at 1 billion, so that's not a massive amount of revenue. And the valuation on this company was actually at 8 billion. So that is a crazy 8 times revenue valuation, which I think looks slightly expensive from my point of view. And I think this is one of the big massive turn-offs for this stock. And it's the amount of money that it's losing. It actually lost money in 2016. It didn't do too bad in 2017. 2018 was definitely a rough year for the company. And at the moment, it's losing about 50 million a quarter. And this is actually the most money it's ever lost. So it's actually gone from it's kind of doing okay to a massive drop in the amount of money that they're making. And for me, this is bleeding a lot of money, and it's not forecast to change at all going forward. In fact, it's going to get a lot worse than this. So the amount of money is kind of worrying, and the fact that it's now at its most money it's losing in its history of the company is kind of scary. Now, they argue that a lot of this money being lost is because of the investments they made, expanding the centres where they can host the classes, and a lot of infrastructure that they put in place, which I can understand. It's always good, especially for growth companies, to put a lot of money back into the company to help expand it. But the problem is that it looks like from here it's getting worse, and it's going to carry on getting worse. And actually, in the next 24 months, it's not forecast to make any profit. In fact, it's going to be further away from that. So to be honest with you, from what I've seen so far, looking at Peloton stock, it's probably not going to make a profit for 3 to 4 years, potentially, and maybe even longer than that. So to not be making profit in 3 to 4 years is something that makes me a little bit nervous, and to say that they're going in the wrong way as well, that doesn't help things at all. And my last point, which is probably the biggest point of all of this, I should have probably put it a little bit earlier on the list, but when we look at Peloton, it's a very, very small target audience. Now, I think that potentially there's a 13 million market they could go for in the US. At the moment, they've got about 500,000, which isn't too bad, really. Now, even at 13 million, if 10% of that is 1.3 million. So there's not much more market that I think they'll be able to expand into. That's kind of like the worrying thing. Potentially now is kind of, can they push into other continents? That's probably where the area that they're going to have to go, because I think nearly 95% of the sales at the moment are coming from the US. So I think maybe it's time for them to go worldwide and try and get a lot more worldwide sales, and that's where they're going to have to go, because I think like they've pretty much got most of the market they can do, or they're halfway there, in fact. And this kind of like exercise at home, an expensive bike, it's kind of worrying, even though the retention figures are pretty good. I just think that people are generally going to prefer going to the gym and paying a gym membership that's massively cheaper, and just aiming. I know they've got the treadmill now, but cycling is a small market, and also to go for that like top high class, higher income homes, that's gonna be really tricky as well. So that kind of makes me a little bit nervous. And like the treadmill, even though we talk about the exercise bike, the treadmill's like 4,000, so that's even more for that one as well. I mean, they could potentially go into other. Have other classes for other exercise machines going forward, but it's really, really expensive, guys. And I think all this, and the losing money, they're not forecast to make money or profit for another 24 months yet. I think the worrying thing as well, guys, is if a recession does come along in the next 2 years, this company could really struggle, because the first thing that they're going to be cancelling, if anyone starts having a hard time, it's not going to be cancelling the mortgage, or it's not going to be cancelling the car payments. It's going to be cancelling their memberships here. They're not going to go out and go buy exercise bikes when a recession's going on. And when a company is not making profit and that problem could hit, that's another worrying thing as well. So right now, in my opinion, am I going to buy Peloton stock? No, not at all. It's one of the most definite no's I've ever done on the channel about if a stock is a buy. definitely not, because even though I kind of see what they're doing, and I'll be totally honest, if someone told me this idea, I'd be like, no, it won't work. But Peloton are having a good go at it. And some of these numbers they do have are pretty impressive. At the same time, it's slightly worrying with the profit side of it, and no profit for the 24 months is definitely worrying. And like I said, if a recession came on, this stock would be hit pretty hard because people won't go out and buy their products at all. So for me, definitely not a buy right now. It might be a worth a review maybe 2 years down the line and see how the stock's doing from there, and see if it has been able to expand and carry on increasing the revenue. So I might review it in a year or two's time, guys, if it does happen. We're talking way far in the future there, but for me right now, I would not recommend Peloton stock as a buy. So I hope you enjoyed that video if you were interested in the stock. If you could give the video a like, that'd be amazing. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next video.